Sri Lanka, a nation at a crossroads. It is currently undergoing one of the most challenging periods in its political and socio-economical history. But how did it come to this point? It's not just a single cause, but a collection of poorly formed policies and confrontations. Today, we will delve into the journey that led Sri Lanka to this tumultuous state and explore potential solutions for a better future.
This certainly is the worst economic crisis we have faced during this century and last century.
An economic crisis in Sri Lanka which is becoming increasingly dramatic, with residents' life savings virtually disappearing into thin air.
It's going to be a long-lasting, drawn-out crisis, and we really have to prepare for that.
Since gaining independence in 1948, Sri Lanka has been primarily governed by two main factions, each with a blend of capitalist and socialist policies.
Sinhalese we decided upon as the official language because 70% of the people of Ceylon are Sinhalese.
Previous governments, including her own, had tried and failed to find the solutions to Ceylon's chronic economic problems. Last year, Mrs. Bandaranaike again swept to power after promising an ambitious program of socialist reforms. But time was running out, and within 9 months, the euphoria of electoral success had been replaced by disillusionment and active discontent.
Cricket, politics, whatever game, if there are rules, according to those rules. If there are no rules, I try to make the rules myself.
However, despite 75 years of self-determined governance, the country has struggled to achieve significant progress in social, economical, and political stability. Last year, frustration reached a boiling point and the people took to the streets, expressing their discontent with the government's mismanagement. This wave of protests led to key changes, but there is still much work to be done to create a better Sri Lanka that serves the common good of its people. The protest series revolved around the infamous Rajapaksa family, who held significant influence in Sri Lanka's governance for 3 generations. It all began when Mahinda Rajapaksa was elected president in 2005. Under his leadership, the Sri Lankan army, directed by his younger brother, defeated the LTTE terrorist faction in 2009. However, Mahinda's second term was marred by allegations of corruption and nepotism. In 2015, a coalition of opposition parties, including members of Mahinda's own party, managed to topple the Rajapaksa regime in the presidential election. The subsequent Yahapalana government promised good governance, but internal conflicts within the coalition led to administrative gaps and confusion. In 2018, a coup-like situation occurred when Mahinda was appointed as Prime Minister, causing further instability. Dangerous gaps in national security emerged, culminating in the tragic Easter attacks of 2019.
Now we begin with some breaking news out of Sri Lanka and reports of 6 bomb attacks at churches and hotels. One blast happened at a church in the capital, Colombo. Another is believed to have hit an Easter Sunday service in Negombo. And we're also hearing reports that 2 hotel resorts were also targeted.
Sri Lankans are beginning to question, to vent their frustration and are beginning to get angry about claims mainly that this could have been prevented.
This devastating event played a significant role in the rise of Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who capitalized on the public's desire for a strongman leadership style. The situation worsened when the government bailed out from an IMF discussion which the previous government was carrying out. Massive tax reductions resulted in a decline in government revenue. The COVID-19 pandemic hit Sri Lanka, leading to intermittent lockdowns and further economic disruptions. The hasty ban on chemical fertilizer imports adversely affected the agricultural sector. As the economy spiraled, the Sri Lankan rupee was held against the floating dollar, leading to economic turmoil and mounting debt. Fuel shortages and power cuts further fueled public discontent, culminating in widespread protests. The Aragale protest series captured the nation's attention, lasting over 3 months. These protests demanded a better standard of living, democracy, economic stability, and an end to corruption and lack of accountability. The protests reached their peak on July 9th, resulting in the ousting of Gotabaya from the presidency. After a period of political limbo, Ranil Wickremesinghe was elected as the next president by the parliament. It has been a year since these significant changes took place. The Aragale protest proved that change is possible, and the Sri Lankan people demanded a new system that is accountable and stable. To embark on this transformative journey towards a new Sri Lanka, a series of strategic steps must be taken. Constitutional reforms, political changes, economic adjustments, and improvements in the public administrative sector will serve as the pillars of progress. One critical stride towards change lies in the abolition of the executive presidency, an outdated system that concentrates power in the hands of a single individual. Sri Lanka must shift away from a culture that idolizes politicians and embrace a more mature and accountable political landscape.
Over-centralization of power that we almost in our political culture intuitively think is a good idea, because you need a strong guy, unhindered by checks and balances, to deliver the economic aspirations of the people. That is a completely wrong idea that we must, after this crisis, entirely unlearn as a country, as a citizenry. By contrast, when you have a system of government that is checked, balanced, and is accountable, you lessen the scope for wrong and incompetent or corrupt decision making, with the result that you minimize the scope for crises happening.
A cornerstone of a rejuvenated political culture would be the establishment of independent and unbiased parliamentary committees. these committees would ensure transparent decision-making processes free from the influence of interests. To fortify the democratic fabric of the nation, a critical examination of election campaign financing is imperative. Scrutiny and regulation of these finances will prevent undue influence, allowing a level playing field for all candidates.
We have to have to ensure a level playing field as much as possible. Of course, there are some bigger parties, fact of life, and smaller parties. But we need to ensure that not one or two gets everything, others get nothing, and that skews the pluralism of the electoral atmosphere, and we need to ensure that that is the core minimum there.
Enhanced checks and balances will breathe new life into the democratic machinery of Sri Lanka. By empowering legislative bodies to scrutinize executive actions and fostering a system of mutual accountability, the nation can safeguard against abuse of power. Creating a responsible voting culture is paramount. By educating and empowering the electorate, Sri Lanka can forge a society that refuses to be abused and demands accountability from its elected representatives. Sri Lanka's journey towards a brighter future necessitates a new constitution carefully crafted to serve the common good of its people. This transformative document should prioritize accountability, ensuring that decisions made today resonate positively for both current and future generations.
So first of all, we have to agree that we need a new constitution. The past several parliaments have been amending the constitution, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, just tinkering here and there with presidential powers, with the Constitutional Council, with the independent. None of this is going to work, right? Because we are not attacking the problem at its root. Right. We have to recalibrate, we have to establish a new social contract, a social covenant between the people of Sri Lanka and the state. And we have to reshape the state in such a way that it begins to work in our interests rather than in the interests of vested interests that can capture and control the state.
Restricting the parliament is vital to cultivate a system that enhances checks and balances. Introducing a non-political president free from partisan affiliations and adopting a bicameral system will lay the foundation for a fair and inclusive governance structure. To depoliticize the administration and ensure fair representation, reforms in the public service and electoral systems are imperative. By promoting professionalism and meritocracy, Sri Lanka can foster a public administrative sector that is free from political interference and upholds the highest standards of integrity.
So the other very important dimension within the executive of such a parliamentary republic would be an independent, professional and competent and uncorrupt civil service. Right. So we need to sort of think very clearly and very seriously about how we reform the public service. And our problem here is not so much that we don't have good people in Sri Lanka who are in the public service. There are excellent people. But what has happened is politicization, which affects their professionalism and which affects their impartiality and their independence. So we have to establish in such a way that the public service becomes something that is much smaller but much more fit for purpose and therefore much more effective.
Establishing a National Economic Council composed of the nation's top economic thinkers will provide a strategic framework to address the severe economic crisis facing Sri Lanka. Through comprehensive planning and prudent decision-making, the Council will guide the nation towards sustainable growth and prosperity.
We probably need to introduce something like a National Economic Council. Once again, a consultative advisory body that will bring in the best of our economic brains, right? Both here and abroad in the Sri Lankan diaspora. We have brilliant economic thinkers in this country who have no say whatsoever and are not listened to at all.
Yeah.
But through this council, you can bring that in. And the government may or may not listen to what they're saying. But if they're not listening, a member of the council can publicly say, look, this was the proposal of the government, this is the reasons why I said this is not a good idea, and I'm saying this to you.
Complementing the Economic Council, a council of state comprising intellectuals from various fields will lend their expertise to influence government decision-making. With their collective wisdom, they will champion policies that prioritize the interests of the common citizenry and ensure a fair and just society. As the tapestry of change unfolds, Sri Lanka stands at the precipice of a transformative era. The power to shape the nation's destiny lies in the hands of its people, united in their vision for a more accountable, stable, and prosperous Sri Lanka. However, true change can only be achieved when the citizens themselves play an active role. It is time for the people of Sri Lanka to unlearn the endorsement of over-centralized governance and embrace their collective power.